if you haven't heard of the drama between Thor and Captain Marvel, I'll go ahead and fill you in. The earliest article I could find was back in May of 2018. Kevin Feige stated that Captain Marvel would be the strongest Avenger ever introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Needless to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway, the internet went crazy. If you look up Thor vs. Captain Marvel on YouTube, the results are staggering. However, if you watch these videos, most of them are talking about the comics. I scoured through the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe researching Thor's power and the power of his weapons. Of course, I didn't have access to Endgame or Captain Marvel, so I can't use those in this video. But you can expect a video when they do come out. I will be on top of that. But for now, we're going to talk about how powerful Thor is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I'm running out of things to say. Are you ready?
Hello Internet, JoJo here, and welcome to IdeaShock, where I have just ordered a poster to add to the shrine of my electric guardian deity, Thor.
Yes!
After all, we have a lot of stuff in common. We both like lightning, we both make some pretty deadly mistakes. Thor doesn't go for Thanos' head and causes the death of half the universe, and I step on Legos.
Agony, that can cut like a knife.
And besides, who better as a guardian deity than Thor? Shazam!
What are your superpowers?
Superpowers, dude? I don't even know how to pee in this thing.
I don't say this to make Thor's mistake look small when compared to mine. Well, maybe a little bit. Thor was the prince and future king of the kingdom known as Asgard, the firstborn son to the current king of the realm, Odin. Thor was trained from the first day he could ever lift a weapon to become the perfect warrior and to succeed his father. But
Thor, through your arrogance and stupidity, you have opened these peaceful realms and innocent lives to the horror and devastation of war.
not really king material. Odin took his power and only allowed Thor to regain it once he became worthy. And he became worthy in like 3 days. Once Thor regained his power, he began to grow into the type of king that his father had wanted him to be. Thor became the guardian of the 9 realms and the greatest warrior in the land of Asgard, if not the greatest warrior in the entire universe. Once Thor went to Earth to retrieve his brother, he found himself joining the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes. And they had just probably one of the most iconic scenes in all of film history. It's a really good scene. Except for Captain America. He looks like he's wearing pajamas. Thor went through hard times and got beat, but he always got back up. After he was left as king, Thor still had many challenges in front of him. One of Thor's greatest feats comes from his first movie, before he even lost his powers. Thor lets his ego get the best of him and decides to single-handedly take on the entire Frost Giant army. During this fight, Thor unleashes a massive lightning strike. This bolt is powerful enough to break a huge section of ice. Now, to find the amount of ice that Thor broke and how much energy he needed, we're gonna get a little creative. Once the battle gets too intense and one of Thor's friends gets hurt, the people who are with Thor begin to run back to where Heimdall can take them back to Asgard. From the moment they begin running to the moment they stop is about 70 seconds. The Olympic qualifications for the 400-meter run is 45 seconds, or running at about 20 miles per hour. Running at 20 miles per hour for 70 seconds, we can find that they traveled 625 meters. In this scene, Lady Sif runs over a gap in the ice. The typical sprinting stride for a female is 80 inches. Using that, we can find that the crack is about 8.66 yards deep. To find the width, we can look at this and measure the distance between the two sides here and here using the known depth of 8 yards. Doing that, we get a width of about 32 yards. All this gives the ice that Thor broke a total volume of 145 trillion cubic centimeters. The average shear strength of ice is about 1.55 megapascals. This gives us a final result of Thor's attack being worth over 53.72 tons of TNT. This is one of the strongest attacks that Thor has in the entire MCU, but it's still nowhere near comic book Thor. In the climax of the same movie, Thor is attempting to save the frost giant homeworld of
Jotunheim.
Thor needs to break the Rainbow Bridge. Thor hits the bridge several times, but his final hit causes a massive explosion. Now, this feat falls into a bit of a gray area, as the Bifrost was in use when Thor broke it, but other times when the bridge was broken, there was no hint of an explosion, like when Thor broke it in Ragnarok and when Hulk broke it in Ragnarok. Using the height of Chris Hemsworth, 6'3", and then comparing it to the Bifrost, we can find the Bifrost is about 90 feet in diameter. We can then compare the Bifrost to the explosion, and doing this, we can find the explosion is over 333 feet in radius. An explosion of this size would be about 20 kilotons of TNT. This is almost the same as the Fatman bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima in World War II. This means that Thor has the power of a literal nuclear warhead, but as I said before, this feat falls into a bit of a gray area. Next up is Thor during Infinity War. After Thor got his new hammer, Stormbreaker, in a scene that, honestly, I didn't remember until I rewatched Infinity War, Thor does this. This is one of Thanos' invasion ships, and Thor just blows it up. The USS Texas is a really old ship. It was commissioned in 1914 and lasted through several battles. The ship itself weighs about 27,000 US long tons of mostly steel. This means the volume of the ship had to be about 3,590,000,000 cubic centimeters. This is the best and closest we're going to get to estimating the size of this ship. However, Thanos' ships are probably made of something much, much stronger. But I'm having to use steel because I'm not sure that Googling alien metal strength will give me good results. Mild steel has a tensile strength of 400 megapascals and a shear factor of 0.6. This means that Thor would need 240 joules per cubic centimeter to destroy this ship, or the USS Texas. Multiplying these numbers together, we can find that Thor needs over 200 tons of TNT to destroy it, like this. This is a throwaway scene from Infinity War, and is most likely a minimum effort attack from Thor. In this video, I'm going to try to stay away from Endgame for those of you who haven't seen it, but I will put up a spoiler warning right here because there will be some things I will mention. I'll put a timestamp for where you can skip to whenever I talk about Endgame if you haven't seen it yet. But honestly, why? It's probably the most earning movie of all time by the time you're watching this. If you haven't seen it now, you have no one to blame but yourself, to be honest. Also, because I don't have access to clips from Endgame, so I can't take any measurements or anything like that. So, yeah. I did manage to remember a certain event from Endgame. Thor decapitates Thanos.
'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't. Well, what's that then? I've heard worse.
To fracture a human spine, a person would need 3,000 newtons, or about 675 pounds of force. Thanks to MatPat and his video on the science of Ant-Man killing Thanos by entering a certain exit in Thanos' body and then expanding. That's a good way to say it, right? You know what I mean without me having to say it. MatPat referenced an article by Stephen W. Cranford. Now, these are two people whose credentials are by far greater than mine, so I personally do consider them to be credible sources. In the article, it states that for Thanos to break the Tesseract in Infinity War, his grip strength would need to be about 750,000 times greater than a normal human. If we apply this strength to Thanos as a whole, his neck should need over 252,000 tons of force to break. According to an article on the National Center for Biotechnology Information, muscle fiber requires about 47.6 newtons, give or take 11.5. Multiplying 750,000 by this, we can get 412 tons of force. Adding these numbers together, we can get a grand total of 256,000 tons of force. Granted, this was with Stormbreaker. Even then, Stormbreaker is just an axe. Granted, it is a powerful axe, but still just an axe. It was not designed to kill Thanos. It was designed to be the most powerful weapon in all of the world, but that's due to its other abilities that I'll get into later. Thor was able to hurt Hela, and it took the literal destruction of Asgard to kill her. So Thor has to be pretty powerful. During Infinity War, Thor journeys to Nidavellir, a legendary forge in space, to get a new weapon. The forge is powered by a neutron star. Once the forge has been powered up, Thor is the only person who can hold the gate open so that the heat from the star can melt his forge and create his new weapon. Thor stands in the way of the beam of heat and takes it for over 55 seconds. For all intents and purposes, this beam should be very comparable to a solar flare, because you can see the sun and the flare, and it's made of solar.
That's a fake laugh.
It's real!
On the low end, a solar flare releases almost 23,900 megatons of TNT per second. A bomb this size would explode with a fireball large enough to cover 2.3 thousand kilometers squared. We can find how much of this hits Thor by comparing Chris Hemsworth's height to the forged rings here, and then that to the rings here. In doing this, we find that the internal area of the outer rings is 1,122 meters squared. The average human male has 1.9 meters squared of skin, but Chris Hemsworth is a big dude.
He is not a dude. You're a dude. This is a man. A handsome, muscular man.
Okay, man. So we can round up to 2 meters squared. This energy is only hitting one side of Thor, which means that Thor had to take roughly 21 megatons of TNT per second. This means that Thor could take a total of 1,155 megatons of TNT. This is 23 times stronger than the most powerful ever nuclear bomb in history. And this is without his hammer. So this makes Thor the most durable Avenger by far. Thor was also able to survive an explosion from the Power Stone before he even went to the Forge. The ship that the Asgardians escaped Asgard on is called the Statesmen. The ship is about 46 meters high. This explosion was caused by the Power Stone. Now, if this was a normal explosion, which it's not, it would be worth 20 kilotons of TNT, which is almost the same as the nuke dropped in Hiroshima in World War II. So, either way, Thor's very durable. In Thor the Dark World, Thor battles the Dark Elf Malekith. The fight takes them through different portals and realms. During the fight, Thor throws his hammer through a portal. The hammer immediately makes a beeline to return to Thor, but then Thor gets sent back to Earth, and the hammer has to make a 180-degree return to him. From the moment Thor returns to Earth, it takes the hammer only 3 seconds, 2.99 seconds to be exact, for the hammer to return to Earth. Using the Earth in the background, we can tell that the hammer is about 5,236 miles from the surface of the Earth. To cover this distance in 3 seconds, the hammer would need to move at over 6,200,000 miles per hour. This is the hammer's return speed, but I think we can all accept by now that Thor doesn't actually throw his hammer, he just aims it and it goes by itself. It doesn't spin like a hammer would. So, to find how fast the hammer can go when Thor throws it, we can look at this scene and find the ratio. It takes about 0.1 of a second for Thor to throw his hammer and to hit Surtur, but it takes about 1/1300th of a second for the hammer to return to Thor. This is about a 10 to 13 ratio throw to return speed. Dividing these two numbers, we can find that Thor's average throw speed is 1.3 times higher than the return speed. This puts Thor's throw speed over 8 million miles per hour. Thor himself is more than fast enough to block and dodge bullets and energy blasts from the Chitauri, Hydra, and basically any other army. Recently, I heard that only people who are worthy could press the subscribe button. Why don't you go ahead and try it? If it works, I guess it's true.
Come on, Cap.
I also heard that liking it grants you electrical powers. I can't verify this, but just maybe. If you don't think this channel deserves a subscribe, let me just tell you, I had to watch parts of Thor the Dark World to get data for my analysis. If that doesn't deserve a subscribe, then I'll have to go watch Suicide Squad, Justice League, Green Lantern, and dare I say, Batman v Superman. Please don't make me do that. Just like and subscribe. If you're feeling brave, why don't you comment down below on what character you want me to overanalyze next. Also, I'll be moving to a 1 video every 2 week schedule. It's kind of hard to do the research, editing, voicing, writing, all in 1 week. But don't worry, I will be releasing at least 1 video every week, though the content of that may vary. If you want to know what character I'm doing next, hop over to Twitter and follow me there. I was going to break this video up into phases like Marvel did their movies, but since I already mentioned Hela and Endgame, I'll go ahead and cover 3rd phase movies. So here's Thor vs. Hela.
Hit it with a lightning blast.
I just hit it with the biggest lightning blast in the history of lightning. It did nothing.
Lightning travels at about 1/3 the speed of light, roughly 220 million miles per hour. The world's longest and most powerful lightning bolt in recorded history was on June 20th, 2007. The bolt was almost 200 miles long and lasted for 7.74 seconds. The bolt that Thor used against Hela lasted over 13 seconds. A lightning bolt carries about 10 billion watts of energy. Watts are joules per second. Multiplying that by the seconds, we can find that the lightning bolt had the same energy as 31 tons of TNT. This is also without his hammer to help him focus his power. Being a god of thunder, Thor can summon the power of a cosmic storm. He used to require his hammer to use his powers, but after he unlocked his true powers, he no longer absolutely needs it. Thor can fire electricity out of any part of his body, essentially making him the same as an Asgardian stun baton with the power of a cosmic lightning storm. Thor's hammer Mjolnir was the first and most famous of the tools that Thor has used in his time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The hammer was designed to focus Thor's powers. The hammer itself can grant anyone the powers of a cosmic storm.
Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
But it's probably most effective when Thor wields it. Stormbreaker is a weapon designed to be strongest in Asgard, if not the entire universe. It is much stronger than Mjolnir, as it was designed to be able to overpower the Infinity Stones and kill gods. It's also an axe. An axe is going to be much more deadly than a hammer, given, the sharp edge. Stormbreaker also grants Thor several new abilities. It allows Thor to travel at faster than light speeds via the Bifrost. It can completely heal him with a touch, and can negate infinite power. When Thor faced Thanos for the second time, Stormbreaker overpowered all of the Infinity Stones at the same time. Now, the axe does not redirect the power, it completely negates it. Which means that Stormbreaker, and Mjolnir to an extent, can cut through and negate any sort of energy barrier. And it's not bad when used on genocidal titans either, though it was not designed for that. Thor can both create energy and destroy energy. Thor has lived for 1500 years, and in this time he has mastered hand-to-hand combat and weapon combat. He could spin Mjolnir at speeds fast enough to make helicopters jealous, and without Mjolnir, he could go hand-to-hand with the Hulk, other Asgardians, and S.H.I.E.L.D. special agents. Thor seems to have a brawling style of fighting. Unlike other warriors, he fights with no fancy moves, and uses only what's effective. Thor lacks much agility and prefers to be in the middle of the fight. Most of Thor's life he spent in luxury and he did what he wanted. But when the hard things happened, they happened fast. After he became worthy of the hammer again, his life took a downward spiral. He lost his brother many times until the final time,
No resurrections this time.
Thor's mother died at the hands of the Dark Elf, his father died in front of him, his sister killed everyone in Asgard, broke his hammer, and took his eye. To defeat her, Thor had to not only allow, but to start Ragnarok. Ragnarok led to the destruction of his home planet and the kingdom of Asgard. When he finally became a true king of his people, he was attacked and the Asgardians were massacred. His brother and the dead Asgardians were all left as space trash. Even then, Thor believed that fate wanted him to live and to kill Thanos. Thor made new friends and gained new powers. Even as Thor was on the brink of victory, he was reminded of his inadequacy as both a king and a warrior with one simple line.
You should have gone for the head.
With this line, Thor lost half of the remaining Asgardians, his new friends, and most of his old friends, as well as half the living beings in the rest of the universe. Thor was the greatest king and warrior, but also the greatest failure in the universe. When he got hope that he could undo what Thanos did, he went forward, only to have his hopes dashed against the rocks. And so, Thor, wanting to redeem himself and get revenge for the entire universe, took Thanos' advice and went for the head. This did not heal his wounds. He went into a dark and deep depression where he was not a king or a warrior, as both of these titles only had given him grief. When faced again with the chance to fix what Thanos had done, he was terrified of what might happen. He was afraid that he would make the same mistake again, and that he would have to relive all his pain and suffering. After a conversation with his mother, he found new resolve to fight for what he did have, and for a chance to get back what he had lost. In this state, Thor became a new person. He became a true hero. Man, I love Thor. I didn't like him before this video, but wow, this guy has had more bad things happen to him in the span of what humans would consider to be about a year and a half than any other person has in their entire lifetime. This has been a long video, guys. Well, maybe not long for you, but been pretty long for me, because I had to edit this thing. So, that's all for now, guys. Thanks for staying to the end. Remember to stay spectacular. JoJo out.